Everybody. I'm Bob Bowman, Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Brain. I want to welcome you to this webinar presentation on how to solve your labor shortage problems right now with autonomous forklifts, presented by Vecna Robotics. One quick housekeeping note before we get started. There will be a Q&A session at the end of this presentation, so audience members are encouraged to submit their questions at any time during the presentation. We'll get to as many of them as we can at the end, time permitting. So just click on that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen at any point, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. So in any case, facing rapidly increasing wage requirements, scarce skilled labor, and supply shortages, companies today are under intense pressure to find solutions quickly. Manufacturing, warehousing, and distribution facilities are all realizing that augmentation of the workforce with intelligent automation is no longer optional. It's essential for growth and longevity. So today we're going to talk about that in a roundtable discussion with experts from Vecna Robotics. We'll learn how autonomous forklifts, tuggers, and other automated solutions have evolved from line followers to advanced and affordable free navigating equipment, and why that matters for your bottom line now. With that, I want to introduce you to our distinguished speakers for today's panel. David Sofer is Product Management Lead at Vecna Robotics. David is an experienced business professional with global experience in supply chain management, operations management, sourcing, strategic procurement, and purchasing. He's a project management professional with a diverse background and expertise in a wide range of business areas. Matthew Chiruka serves as Director of Business Development and Strategy at Vecna Robotics. He collaborates closely with Vecna's customers and partners in the application of cutting-edge automation to help the world's leading logistics companies understand and implement intelligent automation into their operations and business strategies. And Van Garrett is Director of AMR Solutions at Vecna Robotics. Van is a master communicator with a passion for developing creative sales and marketing strategies. For nearly 30 years, he has honed and proved his abilities as a visionary, creator, and driver of market share in engineering and robotics. He successfully started and exited 2 companies. So at that point, I want to turn us over to the panel discussion portion of our presentation. I'm going to direct this first question to Matt Chiruka. How are recent advancements in automation able to help address current labor concerns? What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. And so I think for a lot of our audience out there, when they're thinking about automation, you're thinking about, these massive structures of 20 miles of conveyor belts and these big robotic arms and everything. And traditionally, this is where the automation industry was. And these were all turnkey systems that required a lot of planning, careful execution, and they were spec'd out to a fixed rate. But what's happened in the recent years is that automation has become more flexible and adaptive. And so you now have solutions such as, collaborative robots and autonomous vehicles where you don't need to make these big modifications to your facility. They're designed sort of to plug and play into your existing infrastructure, into your existing operations. And they're also, I think the key thing here is that they are adaptive. So as opposed to always executing the same process over and over again, they're able to, in the case of picking robots, adapt to different SKUs and products that are coming through that maybe they've never seen before. In the case of autonomous vehicles, they're able to handle route changes and modifications to the way that your processes are operating. And so this has resulted in these lightweight, scalable systems that are much more accessible to the general market than they used to be. And so with the labor shortages that we're currently experiencing, robots, it's a cliche, but it's always the dull, dirty, and dangerous, right? And so they're really focused on supplementing your existing labor force and handling all of the non-value add tasks that are kind of the day-to-day distractions to them, and allows you to do more with less. Essentially, that's what these solutions are designed to do.
Yeah, seems like a good fit. David, what do you think about that? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think Yeah, I think what I'd like to add is that, I think for me, one of the most important things are flexibility and scalability. And so when we talk about flexibility, we're talking about, peak season versus non-peak season. If you have a specific labor shortage at a certain amount of time, you can add robots in or take them out when you need. And also, if you have multiple sites, for example, within the US, one facility needs more robots, one facility needs less robots, you can sort of mix and match. And the other part I'd like to talk about is scalability. So scalability is like, if you have a few robots, maybe you need to add one more, or maybe you need a reduction in your robots. So I think the ability to add or take away robots in different time periods at different facilities really is a key part in terms of addressing your labor shortage at a specific time, at a specific place in a certain way.
Yeah, and also addressing just the very nature of the peak season nature of so much distribution. That's great. Van, what's your observation about that?
I think some of the advancements in our technology stacks, right, in our LiDAR sensors and our cameras and things like that, allows us now to be, like free range chickens, right? Free range robots. We can run around. We can move around in an environment where we're infrastructure free. We don't have to have lines in the floor or magnetic strips or things like that. And again, exactly what Dave and Matt are talking about is flexibility, right? We're at an age right now where you need to be flexible, and your robotic fleet needs to be as flexible as the warehousing or manufacturing environment you're running in.
Yeah, I love your description of the free range aspect of it, Van. That's really great. I'm also interested in all three of you having kind of the implications here that this equipment today is, I don't know if I hesitate to use the word smarter than it used to be. I mean, old automation, you think of like picking arms or arms in factories that do one repeatable task again and again and again. That's all they do. They don't have any awareness of their environment. So really, you guys are telling me now about something that's way more sophisticated, not just what it does, but how it's aware of its environment. Would that be a good characterization?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, cool. Okay, I'm going to direct this next question also to Matt, and also invite both of you, David and Van, to offer your own observations as well. But where can self-driving equipment be best applied to optimize operations?
Yeah, there's a broad range of equipment out there. Bots as small as moving individual parcels all the way up to moving 10-20,000 pounds, and so you see a pretty broad range of applications everywhere from manufacturing, distribution, even getting down into your e-com and fulfillment. But really all of the glue that kind of ties all of these together, as we talked about at the beginning, is that non-value add, right? And so you're looking for situations where you have a lot of A to B movement, especially with non-value add travel. And so when you look at a manufacturing facility, for instance, a lot of time you see robots that are taking parts from the supermarket out to the assembly lines, moving parts from one process to the next, and then at the end of manufacturing, once things have been fully packaged, taking those and sorting them out to their appropriate outbound trailers. And as you move that into warehousing, then you see something similar, right? Of pretty much anything from dock to dock, you're going to see mobile robots doing. So that could be picking, that could be put away, that could be bringing materials out of storage over to like a kitting or a packaging area. There's all sorts of different ways that robots are applied. But at the end of the day, it's really focused on that A to B.
Yeah, and I would add, in terms of optimizing operations, what we found with a lot of customers is, a lot of customers are sort of hesitant to make a big investment into robots. They're not really sure if it's going to work for them. But we encourage people to start with the easy things. Prove that these robots work in your facility, and then you can get some visibility from higher level executives, maybe across the swath of different facilities, and prove out that it works. Start simple and let people get used to it. And then this way, people feel more comfortable, so that when you keep adding robots to make more efficiencies, it'll get easier and easier to get buy-in from not only corporate executives, but also from the staff at the facility themselves. So again, we would encourage people, start easy, get buy-in, prove that it works, and then you can scale up from there.
Yeah, the monotonous tasks, right? The monotonous, repetitive, long haul, those types of things are a perfect place to start.
Mm-hmm. Also, it's interesting what you're saying about the travel time being cut down. I mean, that's a huge deal. How many miles does a typical human warehouse worker walk in a given day? And how many can be cut back with these things? So is that a real selling point, guys? Do you think that, cutting back on actual human travel, it's because of self-driving equipment?
Yeah, absolutely. And, building upon what David was saying, these seem like simple things, right? Of like, yeah, sure, the robot's just driving long distances, but at the end of the day, literally tens of thousands of these robots have been deployed across all these different use cases by some of the largest companies on the planet. They're scaling them globally. There's been, billions of dollars invested into this area. And so these are proven solutions that bring value. And as David was mentioning, don't be afraid to find these quick, easy wins and then kind of build it up from there.
Proven solutions interesting because outside the walls of the warehouse, all the talk in public about self-driving vehicles, autonomous vehicles, everybody wringing their hands over whether we've reached that point of technology. And here we are in warehouses, and it's become common practice. I mean, nobody questions the ability of these self-driving vehicles to achieve that goal. So that's pretty impressive. Van, I want to direct a question to you. Let's drill down a little bit more into the weeds to mix a metaphor here for a moment. What does it take to deploy and operate this self-driving equipment? Also, we refer to them, of course, as AMRs, autonomous mobile robots. What's it take?
Yeah, so not as much as you think, right? So the misimpression for everybody is that it's too expensive. They have safety concerns. It's too hard. It's a change in human behavior. All those things are valid. But I would say after your first deployment, most of those go away. So the basic structure of putting a system in place is a map, right? And every facility, no matter where you are, has some type of CAD file. So, when we look at taking on a deployment, it's as simple as you get that CAD file of the facility, and you designate exactly where those pick and drop off locations are, where you want to have those robots, manipulate product. And then you lay your map on top of the existing CAD file that you have for facility. Now, I am really oversimplifying that. I am, but that's basically what you need. It is not as difficult as a lot of people will tell you it is. It can be very simple, and deployments can go a lot faster than they did even a few years ago.
Yeah,
David, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I was just gonna follow up with that, is that I think, historically, going back to the advances in automation, I think that these projects, one, they took a lot of planning, and then two, the commissioning process would take, weeks, months, maybe even a year sometimes to get these systems up and running. And these new solutions really are designed to be much more kind of drop-in systems, as Van mentioned. So you still want to plan it out intelligently, right, in terms of like knowing what you want the system to do. But the commissioning times are significantly faster. You get the value and the return from the system much faster. And because you're not making any modifications to your operations or to your facility for that matter, it's a lot easier to get that adoption.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking to customers nearly every day, and I think a lot of people are concerned with safety, with IT security, with rerouting things, maybe with even changing a workflow. These are valid concerns, but we deal with these every day, and companies like us are experts in helping you overcome these barriers. And the reality is that all of your competitors are doing this too, and you don't want to get left behind in this movement towards automation. So whatever item is holding you back, you think, oh, we can't do this because of XYZ. We've dealt with all these things, and companies like us have the solution, have the experience to get people started quickly and get moving with this.
You say get people started. That's an important element as well. We've been talking about getting the equipment started, but with very few cases, if any, are we talking about warehouse environments where the people are gone. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got these self-driving vehicles, they still have to interact with people on a regular basis. So talk to me a little about, guys, about the safety aspect. Number one, you've mentioned that, how these machines ensure that. And number two, how do you train the people in the facility to begin working with these machines as quickly as possible?
Yeah, so I'll start with safety. I mean, our machines are obviously abide by the safety standards set in our industry, ANSI B56.5, and a variety of other standards. We also have third-party safety risk assessments as well. And so, in terms of safety, we have, haven't had any incidents. I think, most companies are all very concerned about this. And so when we talk with customers, it's obviously a big thing in their mind. So, we take all the precautions, and that also translates into, speaking with the people and getting them feeling comfortable around the robots. So when we, companies like us and all people in this industry, when we do a deployment, it's really about training the people on how to use the robots, how to work in a complementary way with the robots and not against them, and to really make them feel comfortable that, this is the future. And they need to really understand that this is the way it's going in this industry.
Yeah. Van, you have any issues you think need to be addressed in that area?
No, I think that was well said. I think one of the things that we do as a company is we really look at having those, the humans make a connection with the robots. We will have them name the robots. One of the videos may say Easy Money, right, was the name. I think that was one of the best names of one of the robots. So it's inclusive, right? We want to include the people with the labor that is working with the robots in conjunction with them and not be afraid of it. And we take that seriously, and we put a significant effort into making sure that the entire customer experience is inclusive with the robots.
Good point.
Yeah.
So
and a lot of times these are also they're complementary to what the people are doing, right? So we have a lot of workflows where you're not quite having a full robotic partner, like, in the sense that they're like coupled with you all day, but we might have a situation where, an autonomous forklift brings pallets to you, and then you as the high reach operator are putting pallets into and out of racks. And so at that point, you've got this collaborative workflow with the robots, and then advances in the way that the robots navigate and behave, making them a little bit more human-like, has also helped with that adoption curve of them understanding, okay, maybe there's no one on this piece of equipment now, but it's still, making my life better.
yeah, we are talking about some pretty sophisticated technology here. I can imagine that a potential adopter of this technology would be somewhat concerned about the cost, because a lot of these operations are not operating on very big margins, and they're thinking, how is this going to affect my operation in terms of the investment I need to make? What is the ROI? So, David, how is this autonomous equipment we're talking about today becoming more affordable to users?
Yeah, Bob, I'm glad you asked this question, and I'm really excited to talk about this, because this is something new, and sort of it's a game changer in the industry, in my opinion. So traditional financing was a capital expense, right? So you pay a lot of money up front for the robots. Now the advantage is you gain ownership of the item, and especially important if this is a long useful life. But the reality is that these robots, the abilities are changing, the hardware is changing, the software is changing. So the downside, of course, to capital expenditure is, it requires a large amount of cash to buy these that you can't use for something else. You could get stuck with all the equipment. And the biggest downside to capital expenditure is it could take a year to get approval. And so if you want to automate right now, you might have to go through the budgeting process, and maybe you only get approval next year, but you need change right now. So one of the things that we've offered to our customers, and many suppliers do this, is what we call robot as a service, or RaaS, RaaS for short, which is sort of a takeoff on software as a service, the SaaS. And put really simply, this involves paying a monthly or an annual fee for the robots. And so what this fee typically includes is a fee for the robot, installation, deployment, which includes site configuration, mapping the picks and drops, and route fine tuning. It could also include shipping of robot. It can include a warehouse management system, WMS integration, or ERP. And it could include some of the accessories as well. So maybe a tablet, a barcode scanner, batteries, and charges for the batteries, tugger cart, even like that. Typically in a robot as a service model, in terms of the warranty, the major items are covered by the supplier. So, powertrain, the autonomy kit, sensors. Consumable items might be covered by the customer, things like batteries or tires, but there's also a regular annual preventive maintenance included as well. And so typically these RAS agreements are for a certain length of time, maybe 3 years, maybe 5 years. But that's a discussion you have with your supplier. And so at the end of the time period, there's a few options where you can go with this. Number one is you can extend the rental term, and maybe you'll get reduced pricing because the hardware is a little older. You could purchase the robots outright, and maybe you get a discount, again, because you've been making payments for a few years now. Or alternative, if things aren't working out, you can send the robots back. These are part of the robot as a service that, again, companies like Vecna and others offer. So the advantages are huge for this. So you have less upfront cost, which means a reduced cost of entry. But one of the biggest things is you don't have to go through this year-long layers of bureaucracy trying to get approval for this. You can get started immediately. You can even pay with a credit card. I mean, that's what people are doing these days.
Sign me up.
So again, and the other, a couple other advantages are you can avoid having old obsolete robots because you can continually upgrade over time and get better equipment. The software will automatically be upgraded for you. And so again, as I mentioned previously, early in the call, this helps with flexibility, right? You can try something out and see how it goes. And you can add robots, you can take away robots, and you can scale it quickly as well, depending on your locations and your time. And of course, there's a couple disadvantages, right? Which is that you don't own the equipment. So, that's important to know. But again, most people, they're okay with it. These days, people are doing monthly or yearly subscriptions for software, for many things. So the key takeaway really in terms of, doing robot as a service is, if you haven't planned for this, you have staff shortage, you have an increased demand, you can get started really quickly. And this robot as a service expense goes in your same bucket in operational expenditures as wages, salaries, and other equipment rentals. And so, by reducing the upfront cost, you can save money to spend on other things. And my last point, and I'm not a tax professional, so I encourage you to consult your tax professional, is that the US government has a program called Section 179, which allows increased or faster depreciation on certain equipment purchases. So there's all these reasons to get started with robot as a service.
Matt, you were about to say something, were you not?
Yeah, I think, for me, the biggest thing with RAS is that it's a bit of a mindset shift where you stop viewing this as an equipment purchase and it's more of an equivalent to labor, right? You were paying somebody $20 an hour to operate a forklift, and now you have a robotic forklift that costs, like half as much or whatever it is. Like that's just kind of the way that you can A/B this, and the way that you should be thinking about RAS is that you are now paying a robot to do labor, and that robot is providing that labor for you.
Great. Boy, what isn't available as a service these days, but in robotics, it seems especially valuable option. So, I get the impression, I wonder if others get the impression too, that you get this technology regardless of how you get it, and you kind of lock in to that technology addressing your current state of affairs. But the real question here is, and I think that potential buyers would want to know, how can these so-called smart forklifts drive continuous improvement of operations as opposed to just addressing the current state? Matt, why don't you address that?
Yeah. So, yeah, traditional automation system, you know exactly what it's going to spit out. A lot of modern AMR solutions are, they're connected intelligent devices. And so this is more akin to an iPhone, right? As time goes on, the more you use it, it's collecting data. That data gets pumped back into the system. It gets better over time. It unlocks better performance, unlocks more features. So like with our robots, for instance, we just had a major software upgrade this last quarter that increased the top speed of all of our robots in the field by 50%. No hardware changes, no sending techs on site to do any field upgrades or anything. This is just an over-the-air software push, and there you go. The robot's 50% better than it was yesterday. And so when you invest in these new style of automation technologies, they're going to continue to get better over time. But then they do provide additional benefits into visibility and then better efficiency of your operations. So on the visibility side, any mobile robot is going to have some form of reporting or analytics associated with this. And it can span a broad range of anything from real-time views of where everything is in the building and how the system is performing, all the way up to really detailed historical analysis of heat maps of traffic patterns and where things were going and the whole 9 yards. So this gives people much more insight into how their operation is actually working than they typically had with a manual one. And then the last part comes down to, okay, I have this automation system, but how does that plug in and fit in with all the other processes, right? If you're only automating certain segments of your operation. And so a lot of these systems also have ways of coordinating with and orchestrating other technologies. And so you think about, how is my robotic system going to interact with manual operations further down the road? I've got a robotic palletizer. How does a autonomous forklift speak with that? And that's where these orchestration and coordination technologies come into play. Mm-hmm. And so combination of this being more akin to an iPhone model, giving you that visibility into your operations, and then having software from these systems that is specifically designed to interact with other parts of the operation allows you to keep evolving over time.
Then, as the big AMR guy at Vecna, do you think that continuous improvement is baked into the DNA of this technology?
I do. I mean, it's like you tell your kids, the more you do your homework, the smarter you're going to get, right? So the more the robots do the work, the smarter they get. And it's such a treasure trove of data. We're collecting so much data that a manual forklift operator may tell you who's going to win the ball game tonight, but the robot's going to tell you a heck of a lot more at the end of the shift. So there's so much data that's going way beyond just the work that it's performing. And I just see that it's going to open up so much opportunity for everyone in warehousing and manufacturing to be able to have useful data that's going to drive their demand and do a better job.
Yeah, in addition to smart forklifts, we have a customer success team who's dedicated to the success of our customers. And so when we deploy a robot with a customer of ours, we stick with them for the long term. And so we are checking in to see how are the robots doing? How are the people doing? How are they working together? Are the robots being utilized to their full potential? And so this is not only continuous improvement in terms of artificial intelligence and smart forklifts, but it's a continuous improvement of how people manage these robots. And so we want to be with our customers for the long term, check in with them on a regular basis, ask them how they're doing, ask them, where can we contribute? Are you seeing a need here in this facility? Is there another facility we can help you with? And so really this is a partnership between Vecna and our customers to continuously make their operation better and see how we can add value for them.
Hey guys, thanks so much for those really insightful answers to my questions on this panel discussion. I think you covered pretty much all the basis of this new technology, but it's the audience's turn now to ask questions. And even as we are answering what has already come in, I do want to continue to invite the audience to submit questions by clicking on that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. And once again, we'll get to as many of them as we can in the time allotted. So I start out with this one. I think I'll throw it to Van. Anybody else who wants to comment can do so as well. But how do you map a facility and how long does it take?
So it really depends on the manufacturer. Everyone's got their own flavor on how they do it. But the simplest way you could do it is you get on the machine and you drive it through your facility. I mean, there's LiDAR sensors that are navigating through and looking at its environment anyway. So in most cases, you can jump on the machine, put it into teach mode, drive it through the facility, and save your map, and then designate the pickup and drop off locations. Now, again, there's the little nuances to that. There's certain things that we can use as tools to look at the turning radiuses to make sure that if you've got a trailer, we don't clip a rack or something like that. But it's pretty simple.
Yeah, you got it. David, and you agree?
Yeah, I think it depends. Obviously it depends the facility. It could take a day. It could take less than a day, half a day. Or if there's multiple buildings in a facility, it could take longer. But I mean, the key is companies, us and everybody's industry are continuously making it easier and better for mapping. And so COVID and the pandemic really sort of like ignited the spark to be like, how can we do this better, more efficient? And in the future, these things will be mapping and training themselves in the facility, but we're not there yet, but we're going to be getting there in the future.
Well, the COVID point is interesting because I know at least we did a couple of remote deployments and remote reconfigurations with folks throughout the pandemic. And I think that's becoming more and more common as well. As Van mentioned, it's pretty easy to get started here and pretty quick to get that up and running.
This next audience question addresses something that we already touched on earlier in this presentation, but I'd like to drill down a little bit more in terms of detail, and I think I'll direct it to Matt. The audience member is saying the question of follow-up. After the map is made, what should I expect after an automation system like this is installed? What training or expertise does my team need? Now, we talked a little bit about training, but can you be more specific about the training routine, how long it takes, what's involved, the type of expertise that's needed in order to get this thing off the ground and running really quickly?
Yeah, definitely. So we take a pretty holistic training approach, ranging from everybody from boots on the ground all the way up to senior level management. And we do that because we found that the change management is really critical to adoption. And so there's everything from basic user training of what we had talked about earlier, getting people comfortable being around the robots, understanding the behaviors of how it's going to operate, to the actual users of the robotic system, right? This is how you configure what you need the system to do. This is how you get work into it. This is how you conduct startup and shutdown, the whole 9 yards. But then we do target, operations leadership as well on, robots, even though it looks familiar, right? It's a self-driving forklift that just doesn't have a person on it anymore. They do behave differently than a manual driver will. So they know where every other robot is in the building. They have a little bit more contextual awareness and what's coming down the pipeline for tasking and everything. And it's not always intuitive when you're used to how a manual operator drives. And so helping them understand, hey, these are the changes in the processes that are going to happen. This is how the vehicle should perform for you, giving them that visibility through the analytics and those monitoring tools. All of this comes into play of helping people feel more comfortable with the system. And then, as David mentioned, we do keep that connection with the customer. So we've got 24/7 helpline that's waiting and available for customers if anything does occur.
Is it possible to generalize just how long the process takes before the human workers in the facility are brought up to speed in terms of working with these operations, with this equipment? Anybody want to take that? Maybe Van, do you
Yeah,
have any
sure.
idea?
I'll take.
Oh,
Go ahead,
David.
Dave.
I think you know, the answer depends, right? So it depends on how complex it is. So sometimes it could be a few weeks, or sometimes, depending on the complexity of the operation, it could be a few months. But the main point I sort of want to get across is that it's continuously like working together with the customer and you know, going on their timeline and making sure they're comfortable and making sure their people are feeling good about what's happening there. So if we need to stop for a day and do another safety training, or you know, make sure people feel uncomfortable about how to operate around them, we'll do it. You know, so it's really customized for every customer.
Great, thank you. Here's a good follow-up question to that last question, and I'm going to appoint Van to answer it.
Oh,
How do you make changes to the forklift's map? Well, it says if the facility changes. Can we say when the facility changes? Because nothing
sure.
is in a static state anymore in distribution operations. So how easy is it? And how do you do that, changing the map?
Well, again, it depends on, you know, the manufacturer. Again, everybody has their own way of doing it. But it should be fairly simple. You update your map, you look at what those changes have occurred, and you remap, and you just make that route change on the facility. It shouldn't be anything that's earth-shattering or takes, you know, days or weeks or months to do. You've updated the map. Again, we're talking about AMRs. That's the beauty of this. They're all naturally feature guided machines. They run on their own, the free reign. So the fact that that rack is no longer there, or that machine got moved, okay, update the map, say, I can now make a tighter turn. Maybe I do a better job going through that facility. Maybe I've just increased my efficiency because now where I slowed down in this turn, I can now go faster. It's pretty simple stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is that, you know, every customer is different and has their own you know, level of expertise, right? And so if there's a customer who says, hey, you know, we got this, we know what we're doing, you know, maybe it just takes a quick phone call with us to coordinate if they want to change map. If there's another customer who's like, hey, we really just want you guys on site, we want you to be here, you know, we got to hold our hand a little bit, we'll do that as well. So it's really catered and customized to each client's need and the scope of the project.
What it shouldn't be is a paycheck to that service provider. Oh, well, you want to change the map, that's going to cost you, you know, X number of dollars. It should be something that is easily, you know, done, and you know, you're not spending a gazillion dollars to make an update to your map.
Yeah, no small print. Let's hope
Right.
about those extra charges. It can really drive up the price of technology. And speaking of prices, this next question is asking for a little bit more clarification on the issue on the subject of RaaS, robots as a service. This questioner wants to know, are all of the costs included in the monthly price, or are there, as we were talking before, other costs to budget for? David?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm happy to answer this one. So the answer depends, and this is a discussion, you know, with the supplier, because there's all sorts of flavors you can do here, and really it's pretty flexible. So I think for some customers, they say, hey, Vecna, we just want one fee, include everything in the fee. I'm going to pay one price per month or one price per year. I don't want any extras. I don't want any this or that. Just one fee. And we say, okay, great. And there's other customers who say, hey, you know, we want to pay for the installation deployment up front, get that out of the way. Maybe that cost goes in a different budget, and then we'll pay the other fees, the other costs on a monthly or yearly basis. So again, you know, this is including things like, you know, obviously the cost for the truck. It could be installation deployment. There could be integration with the WMS system, and then you have the accessories, tugger carts, tablet barcode scanners, batteries, and charges chargers, things like that. But I would encourage people listening to this webinar really to discuss this with the supplier and come to an agreement that feels comfortable for you, because that's really what's most important at the end, is that the customer is feeling good and gets their customized, personalized solution for them.
Okay, all well and good, David, but this next questioner wants to know what usually happens at the end of the lease contract if we or they use RAS.
Yeah, well, hopefully things are going so well that you just want to keep going. And of course, that's an option, right? Is to keep going, either with the same hardware, or maybe if there's been significant improvements, or the customer and the supplier can agree, they can get new hardware. So software, so for Vecna at least, software is continuously updated as we push out new features, new upgrades. That's always sort of happening. And of course, hardware is changing rapidly as well. So at the end of the term, we see, most people want to keep going with their RAS agreement. Or some people, really, if they're like, hey, this is going so well, maybe they finally got their CapEx budget approved after all these years of waiting. They finally got the money. They're like, okay, we want to buy it outright. And that's fine too. And so I think it really just depends, and that's a discussion. But really, the thing is, people between the customer and supplier should really know how things are going. And so over the course of the lifetime of working together, for example, at Vecna, we're constantly working with the customer to make sure that the robots are suiting their needs. And if they're not, then we could change to a new application. We could move to a new facility. We can sort of rejigger things to make it work for them. So really, there's options, but the best thing, ideally, obviously for the customer, if things are working, and for us is to keep going with this.
Yeah, but in times of uncertainty like we're in now, flexibility is just everything. It's just the whole ball game.
Yeah.
So we're running a little bit short on time. I think we have time for one more question, and I'm going to ask Matt to answer this one. How do we evaluate what equipment is best for my facility? Asks this questioner. Generally, how does my team start evaluating these solutions?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think across the board, you'll find some fairly consistent answers of the biggest one being you want to start with multi-shift operations. You're going to get your best ROI the longer that the robots are running. And generally speaking, bigger is better as well, if that's an option for you. The more square footage, generally the more travel you're going to save. But at the end of the day, what you really need to do is start with a operational audit, really going through your processes, understanding what are my pain points, where are there opportunities to both improve productivity that match with existing suppliers out there. As part of that, Vecna and most automation organizations such as ourselves, we have staff who have, years and years of operational experience designing automation systems and evaluating these very same things for customers. And so I would say don't hesitate to lean on that expertise and to reach out to companies such as ours. We're happy to provide those evaluations free of charge, because at the end of the day, as both David and Van have mentioned, this is a partnership. We are trying to solve your problems. And so let's find where those problems are and solve it together.
It is truly amazing the level of sophistication and usability, and for that matter, affordability that this technology has reached today. I want to thank our great panelists today. I want to thank David Sofer, Matt Chiruka, Van Garrett, all of Vecna Robotics for a fantastic presentation, telling us what's going on in autonomous robots in the facility today. You can learn more about Vecna Robotics. There's your information. There's a URL, and get your definitive guide to AMRs. There's a second URL there. By the way, this presentation will be made available and sent to all attendees so that you can consult it at your leisure. But in the meantime, again, I want to thank our great speakers for today. I want to thank our audience for participating and for your own excellent questions. Everybody, happy holidays. Stay well. Have a great day.